The Bloomburrow previews have begun in earnest, and I've just got home from work, so let's dive into some of these things and see what's going on. And just as a reminder, if you like what I'm doing here, please like, share, comment, subscribe. These things all help my channel grow as I'm on my way to my first 1,000 subs, which right now it looks like I'm about 6 subscribers away. So I'd appreciate your subscription. With that said, let's get into the previews. I thought for this preview video, I'd tie in some of the brand new mechanics that are coming from the Bloomburrow set. Let's start off with Forage. What it does is you exile 3 cards from your graveyard or sacrifice a food token. All the squirrels in the set seem to have this one and abilities that are focused around this, with many either creating food tokens later to feed into Forage, or you have ways of doing the Forage to get a benefit, including some of these cards that are going to find their way into my Chatterfang deck, such as Camellia, the Seed Miser. For 1 black and a green squirrel warlock with Menace. Other squirrels you control have Menace, and whenever you sacrifice 1 or more foods, create a 1/1 green squirrel creature token, and you can pay 2 and Forage, put a +1/+1 counter on each other squirrel you control. So you pay 2, then you can either exile 3 cards from your graveyard or sack a food to put counters on all your other squirrels. This is a great card for any squirrel deck. They also have a new card called Thornvault Forager. For 1 and a green, it's a squirrel ranger that taps for a green, or you can tap and Forage, add 2 mana in any combination of colors, or 3 and a green, tap it, search your library for a squirrel card, reveal it and put it in your hand, then shuffle. Just again, another great card for a squirrel-centric deck, because Chatterfang can be built a couple of different ways if you do that deck. In either you can build it just around tokens to get the bonus benefit of creating the squirrels off of Chatterfang, or you can actually build a squirrel deck that is just, put all the different squirrels into it, and that's how you would probably want to build the Thornvault Forager and Camellia into the deck, plus any other new squirrels that are coming in the main set or in the pre-con. The next new ability that's kind of interesting is Offspring. You pay an additional cost as you cast a creature spell, and then when the creature enters, if you paid the Offspring cost, you create a 1/1 token copy of the creature that has the ability. The Offspring cost varies by each creature that has it, but the values of 2 and 4 is what's been shown so far, such as with Warren Warleader for 2 white, Rabbit Knight, Offspring 2, and then whenever you attack, choose one, you create a 1/1 white rabbit creature token that's tapped and attacking, or your attacking creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn, and it's a 4/4. So if you do the Offspring cost, basically 6 mana, you get the 4/4 version of this, and you get a 1/1 version of this as well. And with that, when you attack the very next turn, you can either create 2 white rabbit tokens, or you can give all your stuff +2/+2 on the swing. So this is a good way to kind of swing your smaller stuff from the beginning of the game up into lethal range really quickly. This card is going to be very good. Another of these Offspring cards is Thundertrap Trainer. For 1 and a blue, Otter Wizard has Offspring 4, so that's the higher cost we've seen. That says when this creature enters, look at the top 4 cards of your library, reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them, put it in your hand, and then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is kind of like Augur of Bolas at base, but if you pay 6, you get to look at 2 cards, because you get the 1/2 version and you'll get the 1/1 copy as well to dig into the deck. Instead of 4 cards deep, you get to dig 8 cards deep. And then we have a card that a lot of people were like, oh, that's cute, in Tender Wild Guide. For 1 and a green, it's a Possum Druid with Offspring 2. It taps to add 1 mana of any color, or you can tap it and put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it's a 2/2. So you get, your generic 2 mana dork that taps for a mana of any color. And then it also has the ability to grow itself. So once it's outlived its usefulness as a mana dork, you can start just every turn just tapping it, or if you have a way to tap and untap your creatures like a Seedborn Muse or something like that, you can put a counter on this every turn, and this thing can grow just exponentially if you have something like that going on. The third new ability is called Valiant. When a creature is targeted by a spell or ability that you control for the first time each turn, you get a triggered effect that varies by each creature that has it, such as the Seedglaive Mentor. For 1 red and white, Mouse Soldier, Vigilance, and Haste, and it has a Valiant that says whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and it's a 3/2 for 3. That's pretty decent. So that allows you to kind of get some good benefit going if you're playing a bunch of like creature pump spells, things that grant like abilities like First Strike, or if you target to put counters on things. There's all kinds of different ways you could go about this, and it can trigger off turn as well, off on your opponent's turns as well. The fourth new ability coming in the set is called Gifting. Now, There's cards with powerful effects that just, they're not quite as good unless you gift something to one of your opponents. So far, we've seen gifting of either tokens or giving them a card in order to get the best effect for your spells, such as on Kidnap. For 2 blue, it's an enchantment that says gift a card. You can promise an opponent a gift as you cast a spell. If you do, they draw a card when this enters the battlefield. And it says enchant creature. When Kidnap enters, tap enchanted creature. If the gift wasn't promised, put 3 stun counters on it. You control enchanted creature. So ideally, you give them the card and you tap down their creature, and then it goes to you, and you get to untap it if you gave them the card. If you don't, you're gonna have to wait 4 turns to actually use this thing as those stun counters start to roll off of it. So you get the biggest benefit by letting them have the card. Now note, they have to let this enter and do its thing before they can get the card. If you go to gift them a card, like as the thing resolves and they try to counter it, they will not get the card or the gift off of this because it has to enter play when they do it. So that's a good thing. And then you have Wear Down for 1 and a green. It's a sorcery, gift a card, and then it says destroy target artifact or enchantment. If the gift was promised, instead destroy 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. So this one is, they get to draw their cards before the other effects, but they can't draw the card, and they can't counter the spell after they've got the card. It's all part of the resolution of the spell. And then the last new ability they've revealed so far is Expend. Once you pay a certain amount of mana, you'll get a bonus effect. That's what Expend is. So effects and the effects and the expend amount varies by card. So far I've mostly seen Expend 4, meaning you get the bonus once you spent your 4th mana in a turn. But then there's also some that show like Expend 8 and other things like that. So the example here is Wandertail Mentor. For red and green, you get a Raccoon Bard that says whenever you expend 4, put a +1/+1 counter on the Mentor, and it says you can tap and add a red or a green, and it's a 2/2. So as you're spending mana and casting your spells, it just naturally grows once you've hit the 4th mana on a turn. And again, just like with the Valiant mechanic, you can actually do this off turn. So if you're spending mana on your opponent's turns for like instant speed effects or abilities, you can go ahead and grow as you go along in the game as well. Now, aside from these new abilities, we also have a couple returning abilities that are showing up on the cards. First up is Threshold. If you have 7 cards in your graveyard, you get a bonus effect. That's the effect of Threshold. This mechanic was so unpopular that it's actually really high up on the Storm scale, meaning it's not likely to see a reprint in a main set. But here we are, 23 years later, they actually printed it back in the Odyssey block originally, and I do mean the actual block because it appeared in all 3 sets of that block. Note, hey Wizards, can we actually see something like this where we're revisiting these old mechanics rather than new ones and like just doing these new one and done things every set? Be really nice. So the examples here that they've showed us so far is Tidecaller Mentor for 1, a blue and a black. It's a rat wizard with menace. It has Threshold, and it says when it enters, if you had Threshold, you can return up to 1 non-land permanent to its owner's hand, and it's a 3/3. So it's a 3/3 for 3. So it's actually a pretty good rate in and of itself. But then if you have the Threshold, you get to bounce something as well as getting that 3/3. And then we also have Shoreline Looter for 1 and a blue. You have a rat rogue that says it cannot be blocked. And it says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, then discard a card unless you have Threshold. So this is pretty nice, and it's a 1/1. So it's a good looter effect that can't be blocked overall, but then it's also giving us, new rats to work with for like a rat deck. It seems like Threshold is going to be relegated to the rat, creature type in the game. And then the other thing that they're returning is actually looking like it's going to be relegated to the otter creature type with Prowess. You cast a non-creature spell, the creature gets a +1/+1 until end of turn if they have Prowess. This has seen much more recent printings than Threshold, but it's not used that often, and it appears on many of the otter folk from the set, and such as the Stormcatch Mentor for a blue and a red. It's an otter wizard with haste, has Prowess. Instant and sorcery spells cost 1 less to cast, and it's a 1/1, which is really freaking powerful when you think about it, because you're cheapening up your spells to spam more and more things into that Prowess effect. And I do think there's going to be kind of a blue-red Prowess type deck available to us, because you also have that one that was leaked a few months ago with Bria, who gives all your stuff Prowess and also grants unblockability to some of your stuff. So like if your Prowess guys are getting unblockable as well. They get to pump up and then smash through. And don't forget, with Bria, the prowess actually stacks. So if this has prowess, it'll gain another instant of prowess off of Bria. So if you curve into these with multiple prowess triggers, you can make up a creature really big, really quick. We also got to see what is a couple of cycles that they're going to be putting in here, where they usually print, one of each color, do a thing type spells. And this one they call the Paw Print Seasons. This is a cycle that features 5 seasons based on the 5 colors of magic that are sorceries that have you choose paw prints on the card, and we'll show to you here in a second, that add up to 5 in total, and then you can pick more than one choice as long as it adds up 2 or less than 5. So for example, Season of Weaving for 4 blue, choose up to 5 paw prints worth of modes. You may choose the same mode more than once. So for 1 paw, you get to draw a card. For 2 paws, you get to choose an artifact or creature you control and make a token copy of it. And for 3 paws, you return each non-land, non-token permanent to its owner's hand. So you can go all 5 of them into drawing 5 cards. You could copy a couple of creatures and draw a card. You can draw 2 and bounce a bunch of things. But probably the strongest way to go about this is to create a copy of like your biggest threat and then bounce all the non-land, non-tokens, leaving the copy behind for your opponents to have to deal with. We also got to see the Black Season, the Season of Loss. For 3 black, it's a sorcery that says choose up to 5 paw prints worth of modes. For 1, each player has to sacrifice a creature. For 2, draw a card for each creature you control that died this turn, or do 3 of them, and each opponent loses X life, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. Or we also have Season of the Bold, the red one. For 3 red sorcery, choose up to 5 nodes worth, and then you get, for 1, create a tapped treasure token. For 2, exile the top cards of your library until end of your turn. You may play them. And then for triple, you get until your next turn, whenever you cast a spell, it deals 2 damage to up to 1 target creature. So Season of Loss is kind of similar to Invoke Despair as a kind of a swingy 5-mana sorcery, but it can also be used as just a straight up win con with the 3 paw mode, draining your opponents, as well as a pseudo board wipe if you just drop all 5 into the 1 paw mode and make everybody sack their stuff, or even as a hand refill by forcing everybody to sack creatures, and then you can draw off the paw mode. So like, say you make them sacrifice 3, you then draw 3 cards off of your creatures dying and reload as you're taking out their stuff. And then you have Season of the Bold, which can help you get ahead with the treasure mode. It can also help you fuel the impulse draw mode, or it can help you into like this spell spamming that you do on the 3 paw mode to start taking out your opponent's creatures. And then the second cycle they've revealed is the talent cycle, which are actually classes which actually were first introduced in the D&D Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set, and now we get them back, but they're called talents this time. And we have Artist Talent. For 1 in a red, it's an enchantment class that says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you may discard a card, and if you do, draw a card. And it has pay 2 in a red to level it up to level 2. Non-creature spells cost 1 less to cast, and another 2 in a red to go to level 3. And it says if a sorcery you would control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent or a permanent they control, it deals that much damage plus 2 instead. Or we have Hunter's Talent. For 1 in a green, enchantment class. When it enters, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. 1 in a green levels to level 2. Whenever you attack, target attacking creature gets +1/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. And level 3, for 3 in a green, at the beginning of your end step, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. So you get a little of something off of these from them, either coming into play or putting them in, and they give you a static effect, and then you get more from them as you put extra mana into them throughout the game. These were neat cards originally, and I would bet these new ones are going to see play in many different formats. Now, outside of the cycles and the special mechanics and stuff, we did get other previews today, and these are the ones that kind of caught my attention. We did get some Calamity Beasts from the mainline story. These are beasts that are so like primal, that are elemental versions of animals, and they strike fear in the denizens of Bloomburrow. So first up is the one from the actual story, Maha, Its Feathers Knight. It's 3 black, 6/5 elemental bird with flying and trample. It has ward of discard a card, and creatures your opponents control have a base toughness of 1. So this has been touted as, a way to take advantage of things that give all your opponents creatures like -1, -1, or whatever, in terms of like Caravex or, you know, experimental. There's a different enchantments that do these kind of things. Night of Souls Betrayal, those kind of things. And so there's going to be some hard feelings built around this deck, I think. And then we also got Yigra, Eater of All for 3 a black and a green. It's a 6/6 elemental cat with Ward of Sacrifice of food. Other creatures are food artifacts in addition to their other types and have pay 2, tap, and sack the permanent to gain 3 life. And whenever a food is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put 2 +1/+1 counters on Yigra, Eater of All. Now, this thing has the potential to be one of the best or one of the worst commanders you've ever seen. So all your stuff turns into food other than Yigra. All your opponent's stuff also does. So imagine playing this and then slamming down like Bane of Progress, blowing up all the artifacts and enchantments. The only thing that would be left standing is anything that was either indestructible or Yigra itself. And then everything that blows up is going to feed Yigra and make it bigger and bigger and bigger. So you have the potential to turn this into a one-shot Voltron commander out of nowhere, and your opponents may not even see it coming until it's too late. So this thing has a lot of promise, and I'm going to experiment with that. We also got to see one that isn't quite as threatening as the other two we've seen so far. Beza the Bounding Spirit for 2 and a white. It's a 4/5 elemental elk that says when it enters, create a treasure token if an opponent controls more lands than you, gain 4 life if an opponent has more life than you, create 2 1/1 blue fish if an opponent controls more creatures than you, and draw a card if an opponent has more cards in hand than you. I like the card. I think it's interesting, but I'm not a big fan of the conditionals. Like, it's a kind of a trap where players, especially new players, are going to want to either play it and you don't get as much for what you're paying for, or you're going to want to try to sit there and get it as much value out of this as you can, and you're going to actually hold yourself back, putting yourself behind curve to try and get extra bonuses out of this. And by the time you launch it off, it's probably too late and you're going to lose the game. Leaving the Calamity Beast, we got some other cards. This one is going to go in Chatterfang and other squirrel decks as well, which is Valley Rot Caller for 1 and a black. It's a 1/3 squirrel warlock with menace, and when it attacks, each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life equal to the number of squirrels, bats, lizards, and rats you control. This thing is super strong with Chatterfang because you're going to have a pile of squirrel tokens lying around, and you're going to be able to just, slam your opponents with just big chunks of life loss. And if you have a way to make this thing unblockable rather than just the menace, once you get that stuff built up on the board, you're going to have a real major threat on your hands that your opponents are going to want to kill as quickly as they can. And then what I think is it's actually probably going to be a cycle here is Valley Quest Caller to go with the Valley Rot Caller. For 1 and a white, you get a 2/3 Rabbit Warrior that says whenever one or more other rabbits, bats, birds, and or mice you control enter, scry 1, and it gives +1/+1 to those creature types as well. So we're probably likely going to see 1 in each of the 5 colors. So I would keep an eye out for anything called Quest Caller because they're probably part of a cycle. And then we have a card that is being touted as a mix of Nykthos mixed in with Gaia's Cradle. It's 3 Tree City. As it enters, you choose a creature type, and then you can tap it to add a colorless, or you can pay 2 and tap, choose a color, add an amount of mana equal to the number of creatures of the chosen type of that color. So say you play this in the squirrel deck, just because I have squirrels on the brain right now, and you choose green and you have 5 squirrels. Well, you pay 2 and then you make 5 mana off of this, netting you 3 additional mana. So this is really, really good. And I think this is for as many commander players that play creature type matters decks, this thing is probably going to be quite pricey, so keep an eye on this one if you want one. We also got our set Planeswalker here with Ral Crackling Wit. For 2, a blue and a red, it's a 4 starting loyalty Planeswalker Ral. It says when you cast a non-creature spell, put a loyalty counter on Ral Crackling Wit. So it kind of follows in with the prowess. He actually has kind of a prowessy type ability built into himself. And then you have a +1 of create a 1/1 blue and red otter token with prowess. -3 to draw 3 cards and then discard 2 cards. And then -10, you draw 3 and then you get an emblem with instants and sorceries you cast have Storm, which is incredibly busted. If you can launch this off and you have enough stuff to start chaining off with this, and I would run something like a 1,000 Year Storm alongside of this, you could create an insane storm count in a commander game with this card. So that's what we have for today. I didn't hit every single card, but these were the most important ones that I found, and I wanted to talk about the mechanics of the set. So until next time, I will catch you guys in the next video and have fun exploring Bloomburrow.